Alright guys, it's happening. Looks like Amazon's Ring Doorbell has entered into yet another contract, another partnership with Flock Safety. We're going to be exploring a bit of that today. We're going to be exploring this contract and what it may mean for you. Do you have a camera doorbell? If you do, if you have a Ring, you should be watching this to understand what it means for you. So Flock Safety, if you're not familiar, you may have heard of Flock Safety. Flock Safety is a group that is basically a surveillance-based hardware and software company. And they're known for their license plate readers and also their gunshot detection systems. So recently, we also heard about the change. So they have these microphones that are spread out through cities, and their intent is to detect where gunshots are coming from in order to solve potential violent crimes. Understandable to an extent, until you find out that they also are now listening for voice. So they're listening for voice now. Their gunshot detector, as you can see, in October 2025, they have announced their Raven devices are now going to be listening to human voices for distress. And it has long been known, and I've reported on this in the past, that they are able to pick up conversations with said microphones. And of course, if they're listening for human distress, well, that means they're listening to everything in order to pick up screaming. And that means that it's always possible that they could be hearing conversations. So when you are walking around your city, you may want to just be mindful that there's no privacy in the city. And let's also take a look more into this Flock before we take a look at the actual partnership. Let's take a look. Another off-the-cuff video today. I just thought this was too important not to cover. So one thing is this Flock system. They actually operate various systems and surveillance systems that work with law enforcement agencies and also many businesses. They even have a network, a huge network of cameras. We're talking a huge amount of cameras that can utilize image recognition. You know, image recognition sounds a lot like facial recognition because it's the same concept. Machine learning, and can share that data with police, and also can be integrated into predictive policing platforms like Palantir. Okay, enough said, right? Well, let's go back to this partnership and talk a little bit about it. So what does it mean for Ring Doorbell users? Well, it means that they're providing a new way for law enforcement to request footage from Ring Doorbell owners. So, you know, if you are concerned about this, if you care about your privacy and security, even your security is at risk when you deal with a cloud-based doorbell system. And just as we saw, AWS went down, took down a ton of other things in the process, from gaming to Venmo to Snapchat. So many things rely on AWS. Well, the essence of what I'm trying to say is, if you care about wanting your security and privacy to be top-notch, well, self-hosted is always going to be superior to relying on a third party with unknown security concerns. In fact, in 2023, Ring Doorbell actually had to pay out the FTC for allowing contractors direct access to Ring Doorbell customers' feeds. And they also said it lacked security. So that was something that was revealed, and it actually is mentioned right here at the bottom of this article from Biometric Update. So right here you can see Ring's own security practices drew federal penalties. 2023, they paid $5.8 million because there were allegations that employees and contractors had unfettered access to customer videos, meaning that if you have Ring cameras in your home, if you have Ring doorbells in your bedroom, not Ring doorbells, but Ring cameras in general, is what was claimed by the FTC, and they had to pay $5.8 million because of lax security and unauthorized employee access. Hopefully they solved that little problem, because, you know, I guess $5.8 million is not that much for them. It is Amazon after all. So what this is it's going to allow them to deal with something called Flock OS. So for investigative platforms that can use the Neighbors app. If you're not familiar, the Neighbors app is something associated with Ring to allow neighbors to share suspicious activity. And as I've shared in the past, I've noticed with my own neighbors who have Ring doorbells, a couple of them are really, it seems to have, I don't know if they were already paranoid or if the Ring doorbell footage constantly alerting them made them paranoid, but one of my neighbors who has a Ring doorbell, he's always fighting with his neighbor about various things that come up on the Ring doorbell. It's so silly, really. They're in serious combatant mode. It's kind of entertaining, but it's also just shows that sometimes too much surveillance can, if you have access to see all these things happening, it can only make you more paranoid. Sometimes I think out of sight, out of mind is a good policy. But of course, you know, if you have high-end things, you might want to put a self-hosted camera up, and you can search for self-hosted doorbells so that you don't have to worry about all of these unknown future partnerships. So they'll be able to request footage in the Ring Neighbors app, and that means that they say that law enforcement or agencies that request it cannot see who declines. Well, guess what? If they are looking at your house, they see it has a Ring doorbell, and you don't answer the request, you think they won't figure out who didn't answer it? Well, if they're looking at your house and they think your footage is what they want, and you don't respond, well, I would say they can pretty much figure that out. That's my personal opinion, of course. As always, this video is just my personal opinion and my own personal analysis on this. So it's not supposed to provide a direct stream to law enforcement, but it's supposed to be by request, and it will use the Flock servers. They say it's going to be super secure, of course. But we know how these things go. And back to the Flock safety system with those gunshot detectors, you know what happened actually with that gunshot detector? A child actually was shot because law enforcement responded to what they thought was an actual gunshot. And you know what actually happened? A kid was setting off fireworks. He was just setting off fireworks. A kid, someone who's underage, he was shot because he was setting off fireworks. They responded as if it were a gunshot being fired. And because of that, that poor kid lost, well, he got shot. I don't know if he lost his life. I think he may have, but, you know, it's just a shame sometimes what some of this stuff leads to. But, of course, there's a lot of public debate. And this Flock company is also in direct competition in some ways with the Axon company. Well, Axon, if you're not familiar with that, they provide the dash cams for many law enforcement. They also were covered in my story on taser drones in school classrooms. That is something I did a video on when it was coming out, that they wanted to put drones that were armed in kids' classrooms. They say it would stop, you know, school actors who do bad things, which obviously we all want to stop that, but I don't know how I feel about armed drones, and I don't know how kids feel about it, if it's going to be a good learning environment, we'll say. So Flock has 6,000 communities, 5,000 law enforcement agencies partnered with it. So they're the ones who now are working to help provide footage to law enforcement across the U.S. So let's take a little bit more into the actual concerns here. And of course, you know, Ron Wyden, he's been a big one on talking about it. You know, here's what they say. There is a certain part of the country that just doesn't prioritize safety like us. Come on, let's be honest. This is about making some money. It's about that kind of thing. I mean, sure, there's some safety, at least the illusion of safety, but the truth in the matter is if someone's committing a crime, the doorbell didn't stop them. It's just possible, and it's not even, you know, for sure that it even would catch the criminal. But the person who is harmed is already harmed. The crime has already happened. Is it really worth living under a total surveillance state? Because my personal opinion is this is only going to expand. And we noticed this year is when the Ring Doorbell partnerships seem to really ramp up. So I think they're seeing that the current administration is really wide open to the expansion of surveillance. That's my personal opinion. I'm not trying to get political, but the truth is, just look at my previous videos. Look at all of the stories that have come out this year with the Doge cuts leading to the Palantir surveillance contracts. All of this stuff is not just something that would happen anyways, in my opinion. I believe there is a wide open ear to these kinds of money-making contracts with AI companies and surveillance. And surveillance it's just a basic part of AI because the data collection is required to train the AI. All of this requires surveillance. And as EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, put it, of course people have a right to be safe, but what companies like Flock and Ring fail to acknowledge is that their technology does not make people safer. It just subjects them to around-the-clock, warrantless digital dragnet that keeps tabs on everyone, whether or not they're suspected of a crime. Basically, this pre-crime, all of this stuff, it just turns everyone, as the EFF once mentioned, it turns every single person in the country and around the world where this is happening into a criminal lineup, a permanent criminal lineup. That's what pre-crime, predictive policing, all of this technology does. And that's the result of it. And of course, we've seen a significant spike in Axon's stock price, of course. So we're seeing these surveillance companies competing for access to Ring Doorbell footage. Now, of course, they mention that it will be your right to refuse. But I think they'll know who's not fully cooperating. So this is the story I wanted to cover today, and Ron Wyden is one of the only people who really has been critiquing this, you know. And as Ron Wyden put it, abuse of Flock cameras is inevitable, and Flock has made it clear that it takes no responsibility to prevent or detect that. That's direct from a U.S. Representative, Ron Wyden, one of the few senators who really actually talks about these privacy concerns. And people have been wrongfully accused. Like, for instance, there was an instance with the license plate reader that Flock also has. So they have license plate readers as well as various surveillance systems. So here you go. This is what it looks like. A Flock ALPR, a license plate reader, that is something that is supposed to detect the license plate and identify the car. Well, at one point, somebody actually was pulled over and they read the license plate wrong. In fact, I've even gotten a ticket for a car that wasn't me. Can you imagine how this can go wrong? I have personally gotten a ticket for a license plate that was read wrong. It was an entirely different model of car in my case, and it had nothing to do with this. It had nothing to do with Flock. It was just one of those highway cameras. Nonetheless, it just shows that these things are flawed, and as I mentioned in previous videos, they've even shown that facial recognition, all of this accuracy they go by is all their lab results, all of their controlled lab results, meaning that the camera is facing the person, it's a straight-on footage, it's not at a weird angle, which most cameras are going to catch people at a weird angle. So there's so many ways that this hasn't been tested, so many ways that it can go wrong, and I just wanted to share this latest update with you guys, and as mentioned, Flock is heavily involved in this mass surveillance dragnet that's being created, and Amazon is also one of the biggest defense contractors of all. I mean, they didn't even want to give a comment on this latest thing according to the article, and to me, no comment says it all. Alright, that's what I wanted to share with you today. Let me know if you have any thoughts in the comments, and if you know of any great self-hosted, fully self-hosted doorbell cameras, I would love to know your recommendations in the comments, and I'll share them on the blog, and I'll give you credit. Thank you guys so much for watching, and make sure to share the video so other people are aware of what's going on with this major rollout. To me, this is going to be the administration of mass surveillance rollouts, and I don't like to put it that way. Honestly, I'd like to see every administration do well, but it's just hard to ignore the massive rollout that seems to have happened this year. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to share the video, comment, like, and subscribe so you don't miss any important updates. And I'll be back later. We'll talk more about XMPP over I2P and other ways to protect your security and privacy.